Okay, I'm going to continue going through practice test 2 for Common Assessment 2, and we're going to get to the section on literal equations. So now we're getting into the part where we are leaving the realm of numbers and really focusing on operations and their inverses, which is pretty much what algebra is. So we have number 8 and number 9 that I'll go over. And I'll start with number 8 because there's a couple of key questions that we'll be able to address by going over both of these. So number 8, we have basically a bunch of letters and symbols, and the instructions are to solve this equation for B1 or B sub 1. And so we look at all the letters and symbols and we want to identify where in the world is B1. And there's B1 right there. So when you're looking at literal equations, what you have to wonder is how many of my variables are there? And the variable I'm looking for, there's only one variable. So in the case where there's only one variable in question, all we have to do is undo everything. Okay, so if there's only one of the variables that we're looking for, we're just going to undo everything that's happening to it. And so in this case, we're looking at B1, and we think, well, what's happening to it? Well, the first thing that's happening to it is it's being added. There's B2 right there. And then what's happening to it? There's the it being multiplied by the h, and there's the 1/2. So all these things are occurring to the B1, and what we have to do is undo stuff until the variable is alone. Okay, so we're going to undo until it's isolated. All right, so we're going to take all these steps. So what's going on with it? Okay, so what's closest there is the B2, and then there's the h, and there's the 1/2. When we look at this, you think, man, that's a scary thing going on with that fraction. So what we want to do is take care of that fraction first. Get rid of what's scary. So let's undo the fraction first. And the way we undo fractions is to multiply everything by the denominator. Okay, this is one of the key tools in our belt for the entire year, actually, because we keep going over this skill, and you're going to see it happen a bunch. So we're going to multiply everything by that denominator. And so we've seen that fraction. We have 1/2. The denominator is 2, and so we're going to multiply by the denominator. And this is how we show the work. Okay, so we're going to show the work by multiplying this by 2. And of course, the rule with equations, here's our equal sign here. We've multiplied it on the left-hand side. Now we have to multiply it on the right-hand side. Okay, so we have our equation. We've multiplied it on the left. We must also multiply it on the right. And so when we look at the left-hand side, what is going to occur? We can multiply fractions where we have 2 over 1. And we have 2 on the top over 2. And 2 divided by 2, of course, is 1. Okay, so we can look at it that way. Or we can see that we have a 2 in the numerator and a 2 in the denominator, and that is a giant 1. And so it will cancel out because we're simply multiplying by 1. And what we'll have left is that 1h. And then everything else is still there. But all we had to do is get rid of that fraction. That's what we did. We undid the fraction. On the right-hand side, we have a times 2, and we can call that 2a. And so that was the first thing we wanted to do, get rid of that fraction. Okay, and so again, what we're still looking at is the B1. We're still seeing what's happening to that. So what's happening to B1? It's adding B2 and then multiplying by 1h. And so we can now undo the 1h. Okay, so that's what we'll do next, is undo the 1h. And how do we undo 1h? It's being multiplied, so we undo it by dividing. And so we will divide 1h. And if we divide one side by it, we have to divide the other side by it. And as you can see, look what I did here. I divided by 1h on the left. How many h's did I divide on the right? 1. I only divided by 1h over there. So it looks a little bit different, but it's still the same. On the left-hand side, what will happen? Okay, so we have a 1h in the numerator, a 1h in the denominator, and they're being multiplied. We can cancel. That's a big 1, so we can cancel that. On the left-hand side, we'll be left with B1 plus B2. See what's going to happen. That's what's left. On the right-hand side, what's going to happen there? We have 2a divided by h. We can't crunch that into anything else, so it remains the same. 2a divided by h. Okay, now again, we're back to this part where we are solving for B1, and we just now undo the B2. And since it's adding b2, to undo it, we will simply subtract b2 on both sides. On the left-hand side, the b2's cancel. That leaves us with b1. On the right-hand side, we have 2a over h minus b2. And we can't do anything with those variables. Oops, that should be a minus h. So we have 2a over h minus b2. So notice where the b2 is. It's being subtracted. It's not on the top. It's not on the bottom. It's not in the numerator or denominator. It's just being subtracted. And that's what's happening to it. And remember our original goal. We want, if we have one variable, we're just going to undo until it's isolated. We were solving for b1. Take a look at what's by itself. b1. We are done. Okay, and that's how we know we're finished. All right, so in literal equations, when there's one variable, we simply undo everything until it's isolated. And that's how we can approach number 8. But what about for number 9? So, well, things change. Let's take a look. Okay, so we have our literal equation in number 9, and we are now reading the directions here. It says, solve the equation for x. So we have, again, some more variables, a couple numbers, and symbols. And now we're solving for x. So notice what's different. How many x's are there? There's 2 of them. All right, so we can't just start undoing stuff. We have 2 variables. So what we have to do is gather them together, gather the variables, get one of them, get just one, and then undo until it's isolated. So this is going to be a little bit trickier. So we have to gather them together first, get just one variable, and then undo until they're isolated. Well, how can we gather these 2 x's together? One's on the left-hand side, one's on the right-hand side. They're both inside parentheses. Well, we have to get access to those variables, and now we can start simplifying. We can distribute first. So in this case, we will distribute first. And so we distribute b through the left-hand side and d through the right-hand side. Right, so on the left-hand side, we'll have b times x and 7 times b. On the right-hand side, we'll have d times x and then minus 8 times d. And once again, we're solving for x, so we keep our eye on the variable. Now we have access to them. What we have to do is gather them together. One's on the left, one's on the right. That means one of them has to move. We have to undo one of them. Okay, because remember, we want to undo variables first. Okay, remember that skill from multi-step equation. Undo variables first. So we're going to take a look. I have a bx, I can subtract that from both sides, or a dx, I can subtract that from both sides. It doesn't matter. I will subtract the dx from both sides. Okay, so I'm going to undo this dx, and if I take it away from the right, I have to take it away from the left. And so what will I have? Okay, on the left-hand side, I can't combine those. I can't make them one thing. One is bx, one is dx, so I can't put them together. I'll just say it out loud. bx minus dx. bx minus dx. And then my plus 7b, and then my equal sign. And then on the right-hand side, the dx's cancel, and I have minus 8d, or negative 8d. And so, again, I'm keeping my eye on the variable. And we're to gather the variables together and get just one. So I have my variables together, but there's that plus 7b. Let's get that thing out of there because my variables aren't alone. So now I have to undo 7b. And how can we undo 7b? We simply take it away. So if I'm going to take 7b away from the left, I will take 7b away from the right. Now let's see what I have left. There's bx minus dx. And then I have negative 8d minus 7b. I can't combine them, so I'll just read them out loud. And that's what I'll have left. But now here's the trick. Here's the trick. How do I get from these 2 variables to just one? So we're going to get one variable. And the way we do that is by factoring. Okay, so we're going to factor out that variable. Okay, so they both have an x, so we're going to factor that variable out. So they have that x in common. And we're going to take that x out. We're going to take the x out to the front. And if I take the x out of what's there, what will I have left? What will be left is the b, because I took the x out. I'll have the b left. And then the minus d, because I took the x out. The minus d left. And that's that trick of factoring. And now take a look. Only one x, only one variable. Okay, so we gathered the variables together. We got just one. Now that there's just one, let's undo until it's isolated. So how do we undo it? What's happening to the variable? What's happening to that x? You read this as x times, right? So we have to undo multiplication. And the way we undo multiplication is by dividing. So this is x times b minus d. How do we do that? We divide by b minus d. So we're going to divide both sides by b minus d, and that will leave our x all by itself. So we divide both sides by b minus d, and look what's going to happen. At the top, we have b minus d. At the bottom, we have b minus d. That cancels. And we are left with good old x. On the right-hand side, we have that craziness that's there. So negative 8d minus 7b, because I can't do anything. I'm just going to read it out loud. And then at the bottom, b minus d. And we know we're done because the x is isolated. And that is how we solve literal equations. We pay attention to the operations, and we undo them until our variable is solved for.